Hey guys, Stealth here. Finally back from my USA trip, and I'm finally bringing you another video. Sorry you guys had to wait so long for your Wargame fix. Today I'm doing a replay on a support game I just played. I'm playing here as a US support deck in a 10v10 match. And I wanted to try it out just to see if it was plausible. Can I get enough kills? Can I contribute to the team? In case you've never played a support deck, it is all about supporting other players. It's not about attacking as much. It's more about how can I annoy people with my air force, how can I annoy people with air defense, how can I annoy people with artillery. So it lacks tanks, it lacks a lot of offensive infantry. Now the US infantry in itself isn't that good anyway. So my main focus in this game is air defense, holding towns with the infantry I do have, and supporting other players by doing their AA for them. I'm also doing a couple of seed missions with my Raven, which I'm going to bring in later. But for now I'm going to focus on the left sector. I was initially planning on going to Alpha Charlie, because from there with a Patriot missile you can fire all the way into Gulf and probably even into Uniform. But there were plenty of people going there already, so I decided to relocate both of my FOBs. Yeah, I have two, because you have a lot of cheap points in the logistics deck, or logistics slots. So I decided to run with two FOBs. You could say it's a bit much, but you never know how a game is going to progress, and because they're only 75 points apiece, I might as well bring in both of them. Now my opening move is a couple of units of infantry, a couple of stingers with them, a recon tank, two Avengers on this side, and over here I have my dual Patriot battery and a ACAV, so another scout. Now one thing to keep in mind, that if you're running a support deck, the support category gets extra XP, which means that these Patriots are going to be even more veteran than they normally are, which means even better accuracy. Now another thing I tend to do when I'm running a support deck is to make sure I can capture the zones for other players so that they can focus their points on capturing other zones using military units. So I'm really playing a little bit on the background in this map, and my first objective here was to capture this town in Whiskey. Now with this town I can command this road, even though I don't really have any standoff ATGMs. But I can have infantry in these buildings, have stingers here, so I can get a good air defense up here. Now right away you can see that my Patriots here, I decided to stop them. They fired and they immediately killed one of these napalm bombers, but they already did their job unfortunately. They blocked off this road right next to the bridge, which is a very good idea, because from here on out this bridge is blocked for at least the next 60 seconds. So I had to come up with a different plan, decided to send the units to this side. I did try to send the ACAV over the bridge and through the napalm, but when it started taking too much damage I decided to pull it back. In the meanwhile, on the other side of the map everyone's pushing up. Now there is so much happening in this game, it is way too much to cover for me, so I'm just going to focus on my own units here. As you can see, I don't have any offensive units here, I don't have any tanks, I don't have any vehicles with ATGMs on them. I just have my infantry here, and I offload it into this town. It's two groups of riflemen each, so 40 riflemen in total. I'm going to put a couple on the edges of the town to fire out with the ATGMs and the machine guns. Stingers on the sides here and there to make sure that I have an AA battery. I put this Avenger here in the middle. From here it's pretty defended. And I decided to even push up a little further into this forest, where you have an even better AA field against helicopters. Now the Stinger is not that good against aircraft. Against airplanes it only has an 1820 meter range. It does have incredibly high accuracy, but this thing wasn't even supposed to take on aircraft, not in the airplane sense. I had my Patriot battery for that. And you see those arriving back here. I put them on the other side of the water here in Whiskey, because this way they were semi-protected through a natural barrier. But later on I'm going to relocate them to here, where they have a very, very good range of fire. Now I put down a beacon here, stealth CV, which means I'm going to bring an ACV here. I did this to make sure that other players weren't spending their points on CVs as well. And this helped them out so they could focus their units on getting more tanks, more AA units on this side, more infantry. And I also made it clear that I was covering this zone. Here you can see my Humvee coming up, and it's going to be parked right here, which is a very nice area for the Humvee. Of course it's predictable if you put it there, but the enemy players weren't particularly good. They were mostly beginners, it seemed. So I didn't take any artillery fire on this Humvee. Now you can see that they're doing seed missions already with this side. Because of that, I decided to put my Patriots under a hotkey, and I decided to turn off their weapons. Only when there was an airplane in range I decided to turn on their weapons, just so they were protected against seed missions, because these are 120 point units and they're too expensive to lose. The Avengers don't have that problem. They are not radar guided, they are infrared missiles, so I don't have to micromanage these things as much, and they're only 45 points apiece, so it sucks if you lose them, but it's not that bad. Now that I have this position, I'm saving up for a seaplane of my own. So I'm going to go for the Raven, which is, in my opinion, the best seaplane in the game. It has the best range, it has the best accuracy, and it has a very good missile on it. Let's speed this up a little bit. Here you can see my ally, Halo. He's on the move with some more units. And now I decide to take this plane out, 130 points, so almost instantly these Patriots have redeemed themselves. After every shot with a Patriot battery you want to relocate them. If someone is paying attention and they do decide to fire already at your location, you're going to be squashed. So I wanted these things to keep moving about after every shot. And I recommend you do the same. Now in the meanwhile, I could not really do anything out here. I only had my Avenger, and they had a couple of BTRs, so the only thing I could do was try to bring in some more units or aircraft, and that's exactly what I did. I decided to bring in a Nighthawk, and I used the Nighthawk to snipe important targets. There weren't any I could see, not on my side of the sectors, so I decided to just blind fire on these BTRs. And I got a couple of kills on them. Of course, not anywhere near the value of the Nighthawk, but it's going to make a couple more runs. In here, my ally Halo was fighting with a couple of Saparis and Mostrelki. And considering that Climax with a Fallschirmjäger and Legions in here, he's running a Eurocorps deck. Now these guys are very good town fighters, but against Sapri they're going to struggle a little bit. So it's a good thing that Halo was supporting him. Now right now I'm just saving up points, trying to get more units in here. I do have my Avenger on this side, and I was hoping to get a shot on these Mi2s, but they were out of range. These things only have a 2275 meter range, which is on the low side for anti-air, but it's still good enough to take down helicopters, and especially with their high rate of fire they can take down a good number of helicopters before they get killed, or before they run out of ammo. As you can see here, there's a lot of town fighting going on. I did consider calling in my Nighthawk, but you'd have to bomb especially this small region where all these circles are. That's where the infantry is. If I would have done that, these riflemen would probably also have died, so I decided against it. Got a couple more units coming up. I got some pivots I called in, more AA units, and I have a group of riflemen coming in here. I decided to bring them in Humvees. All of my infantry is Humvee based, just so they can relocate quickly, because these 10v10 maps tend to be really big. And I didn't really see the advantage of having an APC which only goes 65 kph off-road and 110 on-road. I'm sending these guys straight up to here, over this ridge, to make sure that I can support my ally in fighting off these Modestrelkis. And my allies have done a good job in this town. They seem to have taken it over completely. Except that their AA isn't up to par yet, so that's where my Avenger comes in. Now as you can see, and maybe you don't know this yet, my Avenger is in the forest, but it's right on the outside of it. And it's not blinking, which means it's spotted. Now if you see this, this is probably because of the KA-52 that was up here. If you see this, make sure you relocate your unit so it has cover again. And for some reason this thing wasn't firing at the KA-52, so it's probably out of range. Now you can just see just how good the off-road speed of the Humvee is. Even in forests they're still pretty mobile. Right now I'm bringing in some more units. I want to have an ambush position here. If they do decide to bring in any tanks, I want to be able to kill them. So I decided to bring in Humvees. And you saw me bring in 1 or 2 CEVs, combat engineer vehicles. They come with 150mm guns. And they are really good against infantry. So I had my anti-tank set up, I had my AA set up, and I had my anti-infantry set up here. This plane got squashed and you got a bit of AA fighting going on here, but this Rafale was really out of position, and especially the amount of air units they were bringing in now, it was really not the right place to call in a Rafale here. And meanwhile my Avenger is moving up a little bit here, trying to get a shot on these Mi-2s, but he suddenly lost them, so they were either pulled back or they decided to hover down, or this thing lost visual because it was just below this ridgeline, and unfortunately they had ASU 85s in here, which took out my Avenger. In the meanwhile in this town I decided to pack up my Humvee again. My infantry is back in the Humvees. And I now want to get these guys to this forest. If I can capture this forest, I can cut them off. And they can no longer bring in any reinforcements to this town. Again, putting down a marker, stealth CV. I'm going to bring in a CV here, so that others don't have to. It's part of my support role. Now I spot a nice juicy target, a Strela 10M. And this is a nice target from a rifleman, which instantly take it out using an AT4. 50 points up. I'm pushing up my Avenger because if they have a helicopter out here, and I know they had the KA-52, they can cause all sorts of trouble for these riflemen and these Humvees. So my Avenger is going to be right on the peak here and cover this area against helicopters. And meanwhile I also have some more Stingers coming in. Stinger Cs these are. I was planning on putting these in the town, but they already had a lot of Stinger Cs and even some Pivads, and I believe there was a Mistral as well. So instead I'm going to send these guys up right here and make them add to the AA, which is up here. On this side there was not really a lot going on for me. My ally had this area pretty much secured. By the looks of it, STRVs. Yeah, the mix he had. This is a general NATO deck. Now, I got bombed here, and this was the first bombing. The second one is coming in now, which is a napalm bomber. And I instantly lose all of my infantry, which is in this forest. These Stingers really didn't stand a chance. And unfortunately we're out of range for my Patriots, which were now horribly out of position. The planes kept coming in from this side, and the battle had moved up from about here to here. So my Patriots were out of range. And when you see this happening, it's time to relocate them. Here my Avenger finally gets to do its job, taking down a couple of helicopters. I tried to get a shot on this plane, but it died even before I had a chance to do anything. And as you can see, I'm now gaining income from Delta, Whiskey, X-Ray, and I have even secured Foxtrot, Alpha Foxtrot back here. So I have 4 CVs in play, which is quite a number in a 10v10. But this way I'm making sure that my allies don't have to bring in CVs. Now this was troubling. I had no anti-infantry units here apart from the CEV, and they had 20 VDVs coming up. If they would have spotted my Humvee or Patriot, that would have been a big problem, because this is about 300 points right here. So I put down a defense marker asking for someone to help me, and I did get some help. Halo was sending in his empty resupply units, or sorry, his empty APCs. Unfortunately, my Nighthawk couldn't get a bead on these guys. Laser guided bombs don't really do well in forests unless you have the target spotted. So I couldn't take a shot at these VDVs just yet. Here we have a bit of a chopper rush, mostly cheap Mi-8. Unfortunately, I couldn't help them out with my Patriot. My Avenger was empty. My Patriots don't have any anti-helicopter range, so they cannot fire at helicopters. My Stingers were dead, my infantry here was dead, so I couldn't help this guy out here. The only thing I could do was use my logistics chopper, which I pulled back slightly because I was not sure what was going to happen here, to keep these Stingers firing. And it seemed like all of these things just ran out of their rockets, so they're now coming in for, I'm not really sure what to fire with their machine guns maybe. I got some more units coming in, some cheap tanks, 50-point patents, and now my F-15D Eagle managed to get a shot up here. So I managed to take out quite a number of these guys, and unfortunately I bombed a friendly APC in the process. I was trying to capture this forest, but I barely had enough units. I had 4 guys here, so I immediately spawned in some new infantry units, but there was just too much in here. And I had not enough units to do it. The moment my scout dies, I lose all sight of this area. And by losing sight of the area, I lose sight of targets. So this is really a bad development. And against these, even these cheap ASUs, I'm not able to do very much. I believe that at this point back at home I was also calling in some chaparrals. They started to arrive. I was going to bring in those here to deal with this chopper rush, but of course by the time they actually arrived they're already dead. So I didn't have much to do here. In hindsight, this resupply chopper was not located properly. It should have been more to the front line to resupply these guys with missiles. So I should have actually put it a bit more here between these buildings. Now, one thing I found very important is when you're playing a 10v10, focus only on your region. I was only focusing on this sector. I was not looking at the other parts of the map, because if you start to do that, you lose sight of your own sector. Your attention becomes too spread out and you actually lose on all fronts. So the moment I'm playing a 10v10, and I learned this just by doing it, focus on your area. Don't even bother to see what's going on here, because you're trying to read the situation here. You're trying to follow what's going on in the middle. There's some targets here, and in the meanwhile you're getting attacked in your own zone. So keep micromanaging your own units. Do not bother with what's going on the other side of the map. This pattern is the one survivor from that initial push, and they are trying to pull back. Now he had only 1 hit point remaining, which is very, very low, and I know that there's some VDV still stalking these forests. I relocated my combat engineer's vehicle to this side to also deal with these VDV, because I wanted to have some sort of infantry weapon in these forests. But of course a CEV is much better to be used in towns or in open fields, not exactly in forests, so it was a bit out of position, but it was the only thing I had here. As you can see, the VDV are now starting to move up, but without a recon unit here I was not able to see anything. Got some Humvees moving up here. I decided to bunch them all together. And in hindsight, this was really a bad decision because I know from last time that there are some anti-vehicle units right here, some ASU-85s. They possibly had some more vehicles in here, although I wasn't sure. And these Humvees are just paper-thin armor. They don't have any armor more actual. So what I should have done is get these guys to the side, offload all of the infantry, and get the infantry to move up through this forest. But I was pretty optimistic and thought, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, not really. And you can see why. Autocannons. And they were just going really to town on these guys. They do a bombing run here with a F-15D Eagle, but against BMP or BMD-3s, autocannons, and ASU-85Ms, I had absolutely no chance. So all of this infantry got wiped out, and this was a really bad move on my part. So that was a very bad push. Next time, use my infantry, go through this forest, that forest, and try to come in from the side. Even when there's autocannons. And of course, with my support deck, I could have used artillery, but I'm not really a big artillery player. So I usually forget them because I'm getting too tied up in what's actually happening here on the front lines. I believe that I do have some paladins which I called in. And these things are now firing. I know that one paladin is normally enough, but I had enough points at this stage in the game, so I just wanted to keep firing. Get a lot of fire on these VDVs, on these infantry units and these vehicles in here. And they're actually starting to kill some stuff. Now if you're looking at the bigger part of the game, we actually have a lot more areas. We have a lot more areas than they do. My allies in the middle were really doing a good job, and they were steadily pushing them out here in the middle. Now, when I had the time, I decided to send a Raven up through these sectors and tried to get a shot on these Tungushkas, which are, of course, very nice 100-point snacks for these seaplanes. It's quite dangerous, but the Raven has a very high survivability. Got another plane coming in. Time to activate the Patriots. At least I hope that I actually remember to do that. Nope, suppose not, but my Chaparral and my Avengers took him out between them. So I was probably tied up elsewhere. I was probably looking at this sector where I was trying to get a shot on the units which were out here. Because at this point there wasn't really much going on in my zone. I know that it was breaking the rule which I just mentioned, focus on your own zone. But at this point I had the time. So I just decided to bring in some units here. My defenses were solid on this side, so I could bring in some units and try to micromanage them here a little bit. Try to get a couple of shots here, but of course without a lot of micromanaging is not really a good idea. So back to my side. My Chaparrals are taking out some helicopters here, but they're also taking artillery fire. So I kept them here for way too long. And if you do that, you get punished for it. Now you can see there's a lot of AA here. So I'm definitely not going in here with a plane. Another thing we can now see is that this wild weasel flew over here. Did not fire any of its missiles. It came out with 4 out of 4 strikes. So that means that there's a lot of AA here, but it's not radar guided, or they just turned off the weapons. So we cannot target it with seaplanes. We're going to have to try to root it out. It's probably infrareds. Getting some nice artillery hits on these units. As you can see, we were doing pretty well, and I had 1280 points, which is exactly 10% of what we were up at that point in the game. So I was not at all disappointed with the deck, because if I can hold my own, if I can do 10% of the damage, I'm doing my part of the game and doing my part for the team. So I was actually pretty happy with the result. I'd expected it to be a bit worse. Now this was quite risky. I know there were 2 Tungushkas here. 2 Tungushkas worth 100 points each. And this is when I decided to risk my Nighthawk. I had it flying circles over this area just to have it alert and standing by. And I decided to, well, even if I can kill one of these, it already did quite a bit of damage on other flanks. If I can kill one of these Tungushkas, it'll be worth it. Now this is when the 2 bombs now dropped by the Nighthawk, as opposed to 1 bomb which they dropped earlier, really comes in handy. Because just watch what happens. These Tungushkas are more or less spread out. 2 kills. 200 points down. And since you can only have about 4 in the game, we already killed a couple here. I kept an eye on it, so I probably took out all of their AA in that sector. Or at least all of their Tungushkas, which you could call in. Again, my zone here was a bit of a standoff. There was nothing going on. They weren't pushing, I wasn't pushing. They could have pushed, because I had nothing which could push back at them. Now let's quickly see exactly what they had going on here. And as you can see, they had quite a bit of units. They had some VDV, some Scratchets, Jalo, more VDVs, ASUs, BMDs, Concours, more Concours, even Spetsnaz as recon. Quite a bit of AA. So they had a solid defense here, and they could have easily rolled this sector. So it's more luck than wisdom that they didn't. Doing a bombing on these VDVs. And I take out about 100 points of units. Still very, very happy with the performance of the F-15D. Now over here they were really pushing into these zones. They almost made it up to Foxtrot in India. And this is where we spot a T-80U. Of course, a 160 point tank is very, very nice. Now I didn't manage to take it out, and because I had my Raven circling here, I kind of forgot about it later on. And I believe, or that might have been at a later stage really. I was trying to go for this Tungushka up north, but I think I forgot about it and it eventually got killed. So just as these Shalos and these VDVs were pushing up, or at least the remainder of the VDVs, my new patterns finally arrive. And I decide to call away all of my AA units. I leave the Humvee in place for the income, but as many of these AA units to relocate as I could, because they're quite expensive, especially Chaparrals, 70 points, and Patriots for 120 points each. Now in the meanwhile on the left I saw that my ally was pushing, so I did try to get my artillery to fire at that position. I believe it's aiming at this stage. Yeah, it's aiming. The problem is, by this point in time, my shells were still in the air by the time he was already moving up. And this Hornet flew over way too much AA and it died consequently. Here you can see my artillery going to work. Doing a good job on stunning these guys, but not actually killing them just yet. And at this point I could fire freely at the bushes, but if he had pushed up further and my artillery would have kept firing, which did happen at some point in the game, I would have hit a couple of his guys. Now by this time we're leading by 8,000 points, so we really got this game. And unfortunately I take out one of his SDRFs. In the meanwhile on my side I was trying to cover this area for infantry, so I decided to bring in some little birds. Now if you've never seen these helicopters, they come with grenade launchers. They're only 30 points a piece, so they're very, very cheap. They're pretty fast, 260 kph. Poor optics, but these grenade launchers are really excellent against infantry. They can even kill some light vehicles if you use them correctly. So now he is pushing in with a couple of K1 tanks, K263s and some infantry. and he easily rolls these infantry units. Now, way back on my side, I had two M270s ready, but I completely forgot about them and I could never really find a good moment in time to use them. These things fire 20 AP power missiles, cluster bombs. They're very good, but they take forever to aim and even longer to refuel or to rearm. So I couldn't really do anything with these things. They're really situational weapons, and sometimes they're excellent and you can really do a lot of damage, and other times you really cannot use them as well. So, trying to do some damage on this side. Halo is pushing up and I'm helping him with my Patons and the Comvats and the CEVs, which were coming in later. As you can see, there was absolutely no chance for these guys anymore. We were leading by 9,000 points. We only had 2,000 points to go for our total victory. And I gotta add, not at all thanks to me, it's more thanks to Bastables. Halo did a very good job, and American Beta had a very nice points value together with Climax, and he put down a couple of markers in the beginning which led me to believe that these guys were on TeamSpeak together. Now my Nighthawk is doing a random bombing here, trying to get some kills, and it got 90 points. I put down an attack marker here because this is where a lot of their AA was situated, and this was a reminder for me and my allies to get something to attack here. Now this was not a good choice. Never send a group of comvats which have poor optics against a group of VDV in the forest. They're just going to lose. What I should have done here is bring more recon units. Recon would have given my combat eyes, and my comvats would have been able to engage these guys at a much longer range, because they have a very good range on the gun, 1900 meters, versus probably only 1800 meters range on the AT missile for the VDV. So the best choice would have been pull these guys back, get a recon up here, get my CEVs involved, or bomb them with artillery or a bombing run. Now, that's the end of the game. It only lasted 28 minutes and we got a major victory out of it. As you can see, I'm right here. I don't have that many points, but I still got my 10%, which is good. I didn't lose as much units as I got kills, so my ratio is positive. And I got the second highest number of command points next to American Beta. This guy did a really good job. He managed to get a lot of command points and get a lot of kills and not losing a lot of units, so this is really a good player. So that's the replay of my support deck. I hope you like it. I won't be using a support deck that often. I do have one for the USSR which I want to try. Let me know what you thought of this video. I know I should have done some things better and I probably already highlighted those in the video. I did this deck mostly to try out my Patriots. I wanted to see how those performed in a 10v10. And as you can see, this game really didn't have a lot of airplanes involved. So there wasn't really a lot of chance to use these things for the role they were designed for. Or I was on the wrong side of the battlefield, I'm not sure which. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. If you did, please hit like. If you have a comment, please leave it down below. And if you want to see more of my videos, just subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.